let us welcome everyone to GFBF Talks, episode 15, believe it or not. And we are so surprised that we've gotten to 15, but we really want to thank you guys. And we want to thank everyone for tuning in this evening. And I want to say welcome, and I'm Dennis Garden, the Executive Director of the Georgia Firefighters Burn Foundation. And on behalf of the Board of Directors and staff, we welcome our illustrious panel here, but we also welcome all those people out there in the internet world who've logged on to be here. And the Georgia Firefighters Burn Foundation is a registered 501c3 nonprofit organization that's looking to celebrate 40 years here in the state of Georgia. And our mission is to partner with the fire service and burn care community to provide fire safety and prevention education, support medical facilities, and assist burn survivors in their journey of recovery. And this fits right in with our mission when we talk about fire safety and prevention education. And that's what we're talking about doing here tonight. And for those who would like to learn more about the foundation, you can log on to our website at www.gfbf.org. Join our mailing list or to make a donation, or you can go to www.giveburnstheboot.org to join our fundraising campaign, because we're always looking for donations. We do amazing work, but without the funds to support it, it doesn't happen. And with that, we'll get into our topic tonight. And I want to start by you guys introducing yourselves and just share a little bit about who you is as we get started. And since Beverly, you look the most professional with the earpiece, let's start with you.
All righty. It's not about looking, maybe that's what makes me look professional. It doesn't mean I am. It's the appearance of. But I'm Beverly Walker, and let's see, I'm pretty much a long history in the fire service, most of that doing community risk reduction, fire prevention, and mainly fire and life safety education. I worked for LaGrange, City of LaGrange Fire Department, and then I was with Hall County Fire Services up around Lake Lanier for a number of years. I left the fire service about 6 years ago. And I am now the director of the Fire and Emergency Services Administration degree program at East Georgia State College, which is in Swainsboro, Georgia, down in South Georgia. The program is a fully online program, and I will be here through next year. My history with the Burn Foundation goes way back when Dennis was talking about 40 years. It's not quite that long, but it's kind of close to that.
Yeah, it really is.
It is. It's really scary how close it is. Mm-hmm. But the Burn Foundation always has my heart for what they do for the burn community, as well as the fire service community, as well as for the healthcare community. And I've been a part of many activities and events and all of that goes along with being a part of the Burn Foundation. And I'm really happy to be here tonight to support that, and also to lead the cause for good old-fashioned fire prevention.
Okay.
Thanks,
and Vanessa would want me to say that Beverly also served on the board of directors, and she served as the chair a couple of different tenures she served, and we just always appreciate her. George, who are you and where are you?
Who I am? Wow, that's a tough question, isn't it? Yes, George Williams, Woodstock Fire Department. I have not traveled as much as Beverly has. However, I am in my 30th year with the Woodstock Fire Department this month, matter of fact. Been participating with the Burn Foundation probably since our first event that we held up this way, probably in 92 or 93, where we did some large like expos where we would do different fundraiser things that coincided with the Burn the Boot. We have also partnered for various different things, whether it be a Sparky visit at camp, or whether whether it's some kind of inline for the way we can help out. For sure, Mackenzie has been a tremendous assistance to that with us as well. But been involved with Safe Kids and fire safety since the early 90s for sure. And it's been a tremendous journey, that's for sure.
Great, glad to have you, George. Gary.
Why, I have to follow those.
You do.
Mine will be much simpler, I'm afraid. I'm Gary Menard. I'm a fire captain with City of Decatur Fire Rescue. I've been there for about 5 years. I was with City of Decatur for about 12 years, I think. And my fire chief, Tony Washington, is very involved with the Burn Foundation. And myself and our fire marshal, Chief Violante, are primarily responsible for the prevention in our area. And when I was with Riverdale, I was also kind of always looking for a creative way to get out in the community and teach prevention. We had a program called HERO, which was health empowerment resources and ownership. And we kind of went out and we did any creative way we could to inspire people to be more safe, healthier, all of that stuff. And so I'm always kind of trying to look for out of the box ways to tell people how we do things, how they can be safer. And I think it's really important that we get the word out about exactly what the foundation does, because I know one of the things I've always struggled with the most at boot drives is when people come up and they say, oh, am I contributing so you guys can buy a bigger TV or something? And I think, oh, it's so sad that they don't know what this is actually for, you know, the burn survivors and the camps. And I hate that people would have any concept that if we're gathering money, it's for the firefighters. So I think it's great to get the word out about that.
Well, great. Glad to have you tonight, Gary. And see, and I purposely didn't have you follow Carla. you thought it was difficult following Beverly and George. Carla.
Hey, I can't follow all of those but I mean, I have a lot of the similar things. My name's Carla Richter, and I currently work for Cobb County Fire. I've been there it's hard to believe it's been 2 years. I've been in the fire service off and on for 32 years, started out as an EMT back when, you know, it was done, been involved with Safe Kids since the 90s, but I've been in prevention 19 years now, which is my passion. And that's what I absolutely love. I started my career in prevention in Gwinnett County Fire. Then I spent 6.5 years as the director of education for the state fire marshal's office. And of course, now I always laugh and say I'm at the Disneyland of prevention, because the safety village is like, I loved every part of what I've done, but just being at the village has just been so much fun, and just, you know, connecting with the kids and getting those messages out in a time where it's very different, and, you know, trying to understand and all of that. And I've been involved with the Burn Foundation for 18 of those 19 years. So it's been an amazing transition and being involved, and I appreciate y'all having me. So
great. We're glad to have all of you guys. I want to follow up on something Gary said, being out doing the Give Burns to Boot campaign, how people don't really know what it's for. And that's been one of the challenges of the Georgia Firefighters Burn Foundation, because we serve really an invisible population, because people who've been burn injured and experience physical differences, the last thing they want is to be in the spotlight. So people don't often see people like us out in the world. So when you talk about providing resources and support to burn survivors, it's like, what is that? You know, we know fires happen, we know people get burned, but there's very seldom ever a follow-up story to somebody getting out of the hospital and trying to get back to living. And we're very, very sensitive not to exploit the people we're serving. And to have the fire service to be so supportive of us for so long, man, it's huge for us. It's really our life's blood. So I have to say thank you to all of you guys for the support you've given the foundation over the years, because we couldn't do it without you. That partnership is just so key. But when we talk about prevention, if you guys are doing prevention, does that mean you're not a real firefighter? And then this question, I mean, we're going to have a conversation here. So the question is directed at everyone. Does that mean you're not somebody who's in prevention, you're not a real firefighter, right?
Well, the best firefighters know that the call you don't respond to is the most successful you've been. So the ones who are really in it to reduce harm to people know that prevention is where it's at, because if you respond, the feeling you get from responding might feel good to you, but the feeling you get from preventing it is really where you've done the work.
Okay. Anybody want to add?
I was just going to say that's very true, and I think that a lot of people will say prevention is not what I signed up for, but when you really get down to the mission and the vision of the organization, just like Gary said, if we respond, we have failed in our mission. If someone's house burns or someone is injured, we failed in that mission. And so everyone is a firefighter in so many ways. Yeah, there's people that are card carrying firefighters, certified firefighters, EMTs, whatever you want to say. But certainly that encompasses their job too. Prevention is everybody's job. It doesn't matter what your assignment is at your department, or if you're on an engine or in a station or whatever. Prevention is your job, and it's a part of being a firefighter.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. One of my favorite stories to tell is to go on a scene and have a fourth grader share how he got out of the house based upon a program that Chad Arp and ourselves taught here in our area. And this gentleman or young man got out of the house and helped his family get out of the house. And when we all responded in our trucks, we were like listening to him, how proud he was to say, well, yeah, Firefighter George and Firefighter Chad taught us this at school. And it was just that's kind of the kind of thing that's just really, I love to hear those type stories where the saving the lives in the forefront before the actual emergency actually happens is what we're trying to do in the first place. So,
So are you guys saying that some fires can be prevented? As speaking for the general public, are you telling me that there are some things that I can do to keep it from occurring?
Sure. And see, I come from a different world than they are, because I'm not a firefighter. I've been doing this, forever. I went through a recruit class, but my captain, when I was with Gwinnett, told me, he said the wisest thing to me ever, and his name is Tommy Rutledge. He's a chief now, but he said, Carla, you fight fire with words. And that was so impactful for me, because when I started as an educator, I mean, I had an EMS background, but I'd never been in a burning building. I didn't know what to do. And I was very lucky, because back when I started, as Beverly knows, a female in the fire service is tough. And when you're not a firefighter, it's a little tougher. And, I had some of the firefighters that I went to EMT school with and that I grew up with, because I mean, I've been around the fire service since I was a teenager, because my dad was a volunteer in Illinois. But it was really crazy, because, they're like, what are you trying to do? Put me out of business? No, I don't want you to have to respond so that you don't get hurt or you don't get, involved. But it was a very, when we started out, all of us, it was a very different time too. And now prevention and community risk reduction is part of our everyday life in most situations. So it's very different.
So if you do a really good job with prevention education, do you put yourself out of business?
Absolutely not.
I see Gary's laughing, but if you do a really good job, aren't you putting yourself out of business?
I wish we did. I would say ultimately, I think we'd all be happy to find another career if it meant that no one would ever be at risk for a fire anymore. But sadly, that's never going to happen, especially since, like I always tell everybody, I think people underestimate the rate at which the stuff in their house is going to burn now. They think they're going to have more time to get out. They don't know the smoke is going to be as noxious as it is. I always tell everybody, you could put your head up into that cloud of smoke and one breath could knock you down and out and you'd be done. And just don't understand that not only is it less safe than it ever was, despite whatever efforts we put in, you have less of a chance of getting out of your house if you don't prepare and you don't listen to that alarm when it first goes off, immediately getting out, and you stay and you try to put it out yourself. You find how quickly you'll become overwhelmed by what's burning in your house nowadays.
Yeah, agreed.
But I've got some really nice stuff in my house, and I've got a couple of pieces in my house that have been passed down through generations. Are you telling me if there's a fire in my house, I need to leave all of that stuff?
You sound like me talking to the school kids. I always say, okay, we got out now. Do we go back in and get our PlayStation? And they say, listen, old man, we don't have PlayStations anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you get your Nintendo? But no, we always say, do you get your cat? Do you go back in and get your sister? Whose job is it to get that? Everyone always wants to go back in. But
Yeah, you know, and I think it's common sense for people who are in the industry like you guys. And like you say, you're talking to kids, but I'm not sure it's much different for adults, because if I've never experienced a house fire, and if I've never paid much attention to safety and prevention, how would I know that? So what should I do if my house is on fire? And how do I determine how large the fire is to determine whether it's dangerous or not?
You know, Dennis, I want to take it back. Let's go back before the fire.
Okay.
The best thing is to not have the fire in the first place.
Okay.
And we know that there are some fires that cannot be prevented. And so you still need to have that plan if there is a fire. But there's so many things that we do, behaviors that we have that are unsafe, that can create the fire, that if you've got all these valuables in your house, the best thing for you to do is to learn how not to have that fire, and to make sure that you don't leave the kitchen when you're cooking, or that you don't have an open burning next to your garage, or all these different things that cause fires. That's the best way to handle the precious things in your home that have been handed down. Is just don't have a fire. And I know it sounds, I think sometimes that people think, that I want to know what to do if I have a fire. And I agree, you need to know that, but take it back a little bit. And this is how these are ways we can prevent a fire from happening in our home, through education, through engineering, through enforcement, all of those things that we can teach, or that people can learn, or make their homes more safe than, or safer, and not have the fire in the first place. That's the thing about the smoke alarm, is it's great, and everybody needs one, at least one. Everybody needs one. You need to make sure it's working. We're getting ready, I think, to change the time on our clocks. It's a great time to do all of that. But the smoke alarm doesn't stop the fire, and it's not going to do, it's going to help you if there is a fire. But the bigger picture, I think, is to that primary prevention is what we call it. Primary prevention of preventing that event, that fire event, from ever happening in the first place. And that's where people can be safer.
I agree.
Yeah,
But-
and
but-
that's something, oh, sorry, George.
No, go ahead.
That's something that we do teach, and she's exactly right. And it can be as simple as talking about the fire triangle. And when we use that, we talk a lot about the fact that we can't control the oxygen, but we can keep fuel and heat sources away. And you make that relevant to those people. You want to protect those valuable items. So consequently, let's talk about keeping fuel and heat away from each other and practicing safer at home. Monitoring what cooking is, because that's still the #1 cause of fires as well. But also, just being safer, taking care of candles, blowing them out, just doing those. And it's not hard things to do, like Beverly said. It's just things that become a habit, because our goal as educators is to change those behaviors to keep it from happening. I don't ever want to have us run a call. I want us to prevent it before it happens, like you said, and she made a good point. We want to teach them how to put out a fire, but I'd rather them not have it in the first place, because then we've kind of failed as educators in our jobs by teaching them how to prevent it.
Well, you mentioned triangle, and that's an industry lingo, because as the common layperson, I don't know what that means. Oh, okay. Teach me. Okay.
Heat, fuel, and oxygen. They come together in the form of a triangle.
Is part of the chemical chain reaction that causes fire. And those three components together cause that. And this, I'm simplistically doing it. I don't mean But
Right.
but it is, and because we know that air is all around us, one of the things we do is fuel and heat. So think about the heat sources in your home: the oven, the stove, the microwave, the fireplace, candles, all of those things. But also think about the fuel sources. And we all know that things burn much quicker than they did 20, 30 years ago. Construction has changed. Fire's not really changed as far as, but the dynamics of the things that are burning have changed. And so that changes it. So this is where we start, is explaining the triangle and then getting them to understand by helping prevention that's great in removing those hazards.
Right. Separating those three things. So obviously we can't do much with the oxygen part, but we can take storage that are around hot water heaters or furnaces in areas that are near combustible. So we can do our own home inspection, if you will, to look at things, the way things are stored, or how we're using electricity, or overworking things. And there's so many different aspects of that we could eat as an adult. So I know we keep talking about teaching kids, but we do a citizens public safety and academy in our area, and I find the kids sometimes know more than the adults do. So it's like, hey, you just have to be very aware of your surroundings. And as adults, we've become so complacent with just going and coming and going and coming and going and coming, and that we don't necessarily pay attention to what's going on around us. And I know that that's finger pointing, but I could look in the mirror and say the same thing about myself, because I still sleep with my door open. So there are some things that are out there that we can do as a whole. But anyway, I agree and echo with what's been said so far.
And you said sleeping with the door open. I should not sleep with the door open.
No, sir.
Because that sounds so simple, but we probably you guys probably wouldn't, but our viewers would probably be surprised at how many people don't even know that.
No, but Gary mentioned something earlier. About how things are made today, and they're burning faster and hotter than they were ever done before. So the synthetics and the things like that, but also in our homes, the way they're built. Everybody has gotten the fixer-upper mode and opened up their floor plans, and instead of having a home that had a dining room and a kitchen and had some of these walls that would separate the smoke and flame travel, we now have these giant open areas that are just literally fuel consumption for a fire. So sleeping with your door closed, the movement of close before you doze is phenomenal. And some of the work that UL has done, and to share that information about how you can actually put yourself in a survivable area with your door closed, even in a very fast moving fire.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have done this before, but you've probably seen the demonstration with the doll houses.
Yeah,
flow path and all that. We had our local Decatur makers make us 3 large scale doll houses. And we always like to set fires in the rooms of this dollhouse to show the community how fire travels, why we vent, this and that. And then at the end of it, we will burn the dollhouse, but we'll leave one room shut. And we'll show them how the whole thing burned around, but this one room that we shut in the dollhouse is untouched. So it's a really profound example of how that actually works in real life on a small scale.
Yeah, we do that as well.
And that's a hard one though. Because if I'm in my bedroom and my little children are in another bedroom, I'd be hard pressed to close my bedroom door and have my children's bedroom door closed. Because fire, it's an opportunity for fire, but the bigger thing is I need to know what the hell's going on with my kids, and it's just one of those things that the chances of my kids doing something unsupervised are greater than the chance of a fire. And I'm just speaking for the average layperson.
YouTube. There's an amazing videos out there that'll show you the survivability. And if we are to be very astute parents, then our goal is to keep them safe. So you watch some of those videos and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go up there and slam the door closed to keep my child safe. So we, in our home, we did a whole lot of things in preparing our plans because I had a master on the main. So my two small girls were upstairs. So they had to be taught at an early age on how to exit the building without my help. So there's a lot of education that goes on, even from a family, from a parental standpoint.
Now, what is an exit plan? Because I don't want to have this conversation and make the assumption that people listening or watching know what we're talking about. What is an exit plan and why is it important? And while you're answering this, I need to go turn my stove off because I left something cooking while we're on this, but why is an exit plan important?
Hey, that's a great story there, Dennis. Of course, an exit plan is how you would evacuate your home in case of a fire. It is nothing fancy, as we tell the children when they are working on it. It's it's not anything fancy, but there should be. You should designate a primary and secondary exit from your home. 2 ways out, especially the bedroom areas, and a meeting place outside where the family meets, where they're not going to interfere with any kind of emergency traffic, but where the family all meets to make sure that everybody is out. And then it should be practiced at least twice a year. The time upcoming, I mentioned the time change, upcoming time change is a time that you can remember to do that, where you can practice your plan. It should be a whole family thing. It's not the kids. A lot of times we give these assignments to kids at school and they take it home and they do it and they bring it back, but it should be a family activity because every family is different and every house is different. And so, some of what you just mentioned about the door close, I've been around for a while. And when I first started doing education, we closed our doors. That was a big deal that we taught people. And then we kind of got away from that because we realized that, I think it was recognized that parents were not going to do that because of the very reason that you have discussed, that because, they're not going to sleep with their doors closed, but then you have I'm glad George mentioned what he did, master on main, the kids are upstairs, or you've got the master at one end of the house and the kids' rooms are at the other end of the house. So it doesn't really, you can't hear anyway, but you have to, whether you get a child monitor or, there's all these different things that you can do, making sure that everybody has a working smoke alarm and in their room and they're interconnected. So if the smoke alarm in your end of the house goes off, it activates at the other end of the house. So, but having all of those things there has to be a plan. The family has to talk about it because, like I said, every family's different and every house is different. And it's not something that, you think, well, this is my house and I'll have plenty of time to gather my precious belongings and including my children and exit the building. And that's not true either. And a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah. And you guys have been doing it. There's a collective number of years on this call. Have there been horror stories about people not having a plan and I'm outside and I don't see my wife or my daughter, and I go back in the house and I'm not trying to scare people who are listening, but maybe I am. I really want to drive home the importance of what you guys are talking about. Anybody want to share a horror story? I mean, not getting into any gory details, but of what
one
happened.
That comes to mind was a single guy, if I remember right, and he actually went back inside to get his keys because he wanted to move his car farther away from the apartment, and he didn't make it out. It was as simple, and they were, right inside the door on the kitchen table, went in to get him and never made it back out. And that's just one example of many.
We had 3 teenagers and it was a townhouse and mom was downstairs and the fire happened and she went outside and the girls stayed upstairs and they panicked so badly that they hid in the closet. And mom was out and then we found them and they were on the phone with 911 and we couldn't because of the narrowness of the road for the engine and the truck to get there, they succumbed to the fire. And so, yeah, that one, I went out and did a blitz with the neighborhood afterwards. And it was just one of those. But yeah, mom got out and they didn't. And they were trying to explain to them, close the door, go to the window. And they were frightened. So that was a big one as well. And, you know, we all have those. But, you know, we talk about fire escape plans, but it's not just for the kids, it's for the parents too. I mean, they do them once a year in their businesses. All the schools do monthly fire drills. They can think about that and incorporate that at home. And I understand, I'm a parent and I'm a nana as well. And leaving my children, you know, when they were younger, we had that in our plan. But I'm going to tell you one that really scared me. And this was a personal experience for me. My father-in-law actually lived with us and he had dementia. And he was down, we have a downstairs apartment at our old house, and the carbon monoxide alarm was at the end of life. So it kept going off. Well, we heard it one night and we couldn't figure out what was coming. Of course, my daughter, being that she had done fire drills at home with us, she was like, Mom, you really did a drill? I said, no, baby, I don't know what it is. So we went downstairs and actually the alarm was right outside of my father-in-law's bedroom door and he never heard it. And I mean, we heard it 2 levels up. So that was something that we had to change our plan to figure out how we were going to get dad out because, you know, he was, you know, he had some mobility issues, but he also had hearing issues and he had dementia. So that was frightening for me because it's like, I do this every day. And now I've got to rethink that. So it's not just kids because we are living independently longer as our, you know, as we're aging and we're seeing all these homes come in and their level of care changes. So we've got to take that into consideration as well.
That's an interesting point about your father not hearing the alarm, because I remember years ago reading an article about how children don't often respond to the beeps of an alarm. I don't remember the details of it, but I remember thinking it was interesting that it's not designed very well to rouse children or to get them out of bed.
Yeah, because if they don't wake up to an alarm, a lot of times if they don't wake up to an alarm, they may not. So they do have voice. You know, you can record the parent's voice or they do have voice activated. But that was a real eye opener for us. It was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I want to go back and revisit what we have incorporated. And I really do. I think it's a good one because we say, you know, let's do drills often. And we say, okay, when we're doing the time change, we do the batteries and maybe that's time to do a drill. But what we've been incorporating for a number of years now is staying on the school schedule. So a kid can remember, okay, how many times do you do a fire drill in the school? Well, it's once a month. So that day should be a prompt for you to say, okay, let's go home and talk with mom and let's just do a drill. And I've been even encourage them to do different scenarios, you know, to say, okay, here's do a scenario from something happens in the kitchen while everybody's awake, then do a scenario at 3 o'clock in the morning and it's a lightning strike, or something happened on the Xbox in the basement, and there's various different things. Also incorporating the telltale, and there's lots of stories that you can hear and see, and in the years we've been doing this, we've heard of tragedies, but one of the ones that I like to try to remind people, specifically the adult crowd, is that why a meeting place is so important is because when the fire truck pulls up and everybody's gotten out of the house in different directions and they don't have a meeting place, what happens is Junior was down there playing Xbox as the 12-year-old boy and now gets out the basement and just hangs out in the backyard, but everybody else is out front. Now we come up with the fire truck and mom and dad are screaming and I'm asking them, is everybody out of the house? No, my baby's inside. And now 3 firefighters go in, the roof collapses, we lose those guys to rescuing somebody that's not even in the house. So I remind them that we risk a lot in our industry for lives. But what we really, really want to do is get people out of the home and then get to a regular meeting place, which is instinctive. It's not going to change. It's the same place over and over and over and over again. So that way it becomes very second nature to not only your small children, but even your bigger ones. Maybe the dad with dementia, maybe the one that's having sight issues, whatever it might be. It's consistent and very instinctive to say, okay, I'm going to go here every time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it because it always happens to someone else. It's difficult to get people to understand. But is it different for businesses than homes? Is prevention and safety different for those two? Because there are things like the kids that are in the school getting the prevention education, that's mandatory, right? They don't have a choice. Then why is it not mandatory for the family at home? You know what I'm saying?
I was going to say that the difference to me is, I mean, as far as prevention measures are the same, but in a business, there's codes that govern that. And fire departments inspect businesses. They have to meet those codes on an annual basis. They do have requirements for training. Most businesses have requirements for training or other types of monthly type safety meetings, as it might be a condition of their insurance. So it's easily enforced in the business environment. But
isn't the message that businesses are more important than homes, though?
No, it's the
That's by nature of what you're saying.
No, it is the my home is my castle theory. I believe that's the way I've always looked at it, is that a fire department doesn't have any jurisdiction in a home. There's no enforceability. We cannot tell somebody. We can go in and make, do a survey and tell people what they should do, but you can't enforce that in any way.
You can't enforce it as a fire department. You can't enforce it, but you can't not respond if there is a fire.
Exactly. Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
And we don't require it in schools. That's a voluntary thing. None of the programs that we do in schools or at the village, it's all voluntary. We don't require it. We just hope they get engaged and want to come and make those changes, but we can't make them.
But my home is my castle, and you can't make me practice safety. But if something goes wrong, you can't not respond either.
Exactly. And that's our job. We can, that's our job. That's just part of the job. It's
that's why we won't go out of business.
Yeah, exactly. We can help you make your house safer. And I think the majority of people, want that. They don't know how to do that. And so that's where we come in and help them determine how to not have a fire or to not fall down, or make recommendations for them. We can't enforce them. We can put in smoke alarms, and we can do other things. If we can make social services referrals if we need to someone that perhaps is a hoarder or lives in substandard housing, we can do a lot of things. But what happens inside of someone's home, you really don't have any there's no enforceability of making people do the right thing.
It's a catch-22, because we always tell people we'll come out and we'll do a home safety survey for you. And we might be able to point out some things that they didn't know. They didn't know they couldn't grill on their porch. Mm-hmm. Know that they had too many things plugged into something. But 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be the hoarder that says, please come in and tell me what I can do. It's like, exactly, if you make a wellness program voluntary in the fire department, the people who are in great shape will work out every day, and the people who need it the most. Mm-hmm. So mm-hmm. It's a hard problem to wrap your mind.
Used the word, he used it, complacency. And then Dennis, you made that good, but they want us to come when they have an event, but you've got to make it relevant to them. And that's the biggest thing, is trying to figure out how to get them engaged and want to make those changes. And we've all been doing it a long time, and we get those that really want to do it. But usually when we see those folks, it's after somebody that they know, or somebody in their neighborhood's had a fire, or there's been a fatality. But in most cases, fire safety is not in the forefront of their brain. They just don't think about it until they need us.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times that I've talked to even the older generation that have 30-year-old smoke alarms, and they keep changing the batteries in them. And they didn't know that there's a shelf life of 10 years for them. They just didn't have the knowledge. So it's so, I mean, it blows my mind sometimes to think about, all right, some of the things that are quite simple, but yet it's very difficult to get that word across. So seeing our local fire departments do it is one thing, but I even when we go into it, do an inspection, I do tell the businesses that, you know, and say, hey, listen, you know, the smoke alarms are part of the safety feature in your business, but even though that nobody sleeps here, they still only have a 10-year life. So and they're saying, well, I changed the battery and the noise still makes it. And I say, yeah, I get that, but there's not a manufacturer around that's going to support that thing still actually picking up and scenting it or actually seeing the smoke after 10 years. Yeah. So your buzzer's going to work, but that's it.
You're probably like us. You've probably gone in and said, I don't even know what this thing is I'm looking at. This is
yeah.
Oh, like, yeah. Where did this come from?
Yeah. Yeah.
Atari 2600.
Yeah, the olive green ones from 1974 is my favorite.
They matched their telephones back then.
But you know, I think the education and the prevention and the resources, those are all amazing. But it just seems, and I'm coming from a layman's perspective, it just seems that the fire service industry does a poor job of putting emphasis on how important it is. You know, I mean, it just, because like we spoke on earlier, we always hear about crime. I mean, we always hear about crime. So everyone has an innate feeling that they could be a victim of crime, because you don't have to encourage people to change the lock on their door if it's broken. They're going to make sure that happens because they want to be safe. But we don't feel the same way about fire occurrences, because that always happens to someone else. And going far back, my own experience of getting burned in a house fire, the thing I heard so much is that I didn't think this would ever happen. I heard that so much. I never imagined this would happen to us, you know, because people even now don't really want to move out of the way of a fire truck with its alarm going. But if those people needed a firefighter, they would complain that they took too long getting there. You know, it's just that there's an assumption that you guys are always there, but I'll never need you because that's somebody else. And I just, you know, like there's a Black History Month, there's a Gay Pride Month, you know, there's all of these months where you hear about it all month long. And it's just not the same emphasis with Safety and Prevention Month. It's just not, you know, it's like an afterthought.
And it's not glamorous though. So crime seems to be glamorous, and right. We see it populated in the media often. So it's at the forefront of people's attention. Fire safety education and or fire in itself gets very minimal, if you will, coverage. I certainly don't want to be talking about the negative stuff, but even in Fire Prevention Month, we see a lot of internet stuff, and we see the NFPA putting out tremendous messaging. But from a local standpoint, from a whether it be a media push or a radio push or something like that, it's not glamorous. Nobody wants to initiate it, and that's a difficult rock to push.
You know, I think you got a good point too, George, because coming up, I recall, and particularly Dick Van Dyke, but I recall a lot of the celebrities doing the stop, drop, and roll commercials. I mean, I would see them all the time, and there would be celebrities doing it because, you know, they could get attention of people. And I just don't see it anymore. I just don't see it anymore. And Gary, I think you said that houses are much more flammable now because there are so many different materials in the house. I always thought that houses were safer now because of all those different things.
No.
And I would have to believe that people think if I just got my house built last month, I would have to believe my house is a lot safer than my grandmother's house that was built back in 1912. No, I mean, that's indeed, nobody would have to tell me. I would just assume that.
Yeah, people really have to look at the objects around them and realize they're looking at solidified gasoline for a lot of their items.
Yeah. That really is true.
Yeah, but I just wonder how many people really know that. How many
people don't. And I bet you everybody on the panel has at one time or another gone out and done a HOA meeting or an apartment complex meeting, and we've advertised it and done all of that because there's been an incident and we've had 2 people show up or 1 person show up or nobody, and so, it's not that we're not trying, but you're right. We don't place enough importance on prevention.
No,
We don't, because George said it, it's not glamorous.
no.
I mean, it's not. And we still have firefighters in the fire service that still want to go and put the wet stuff on the red stuff because that's what they think is fun.
It is.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
Adrenaline junkies, right?
It is. It absolutely is. And, it's like George said, though, prevention is not glamorous. It's not, us getting on the big red truck. We come in our van and, we bring out smoke alarms and we do that. And it's wonderful, but you're right. It's not, it's not cool.
Mm-hmm. And what resources, I know you're at the safety village, Carla. What is that, if you can share?
It's actually what it is. It's actually a building, and what we have is we have a mini city out there, and we do every 2nd grader and every 4th grader in Cobb County comes to the village every year. And so it's about 30,000 that go through it, and we have summer events as well. But we do 9 different modules, and one of them includes lunch. But we do fire safety, we do injury prevention, we do seatbelt safety, we partner with Safe Kids, and we do all those messages, but it's very interactive. So they're able to get all of those messages and learn about that. We do dog bite safety. We have a neat puppet show. We drive safety cars. We have bicycle and scooter safety. So we're incorporating those messages, but you notice what I said though, 2nd and 4th grade.
And I was going to ask, who determined that?
Well, that was there before I came along. That the
you have to be defensive.
I completely agree. And the village is an amazing place, and I absolutely love it. But unfortunately, those are not the kids that we're seeing getting injured. It's our older adult population. It's those that are living independently, those that are underserved, or our language barriers, or our melting pot, as you will. That's the frustration for us, because we just don't have the resources, and everybody else here knows the same thing. We can only do what we can do. And right now at the village, there's only 2 full-time educators now. 1 retired and 1 quit. So we're in the process of hiring. So we rely on part-timers. So it's a great program, but we're not getting out in the community as much just because of lack of resources. And COVID, did a number on all of us when it comes to prevention and education as well. So we relied on videos and doing a lot of Zoom and all of that, but it's just not the same thing.
Right.
And to get the steam that we may have had 5 years ago back again is very difficult.
It absolutely is. You're right.
Yeah, it is. One thing I'd like to say about the village, though, and I've spent a lot of time there, but it was great to hear my 4th grade teacher daughter who took her class to your village this week, and for her to be surrounded around fire safety and stuff like that for her 22 years of life, and to hear her tell about the students and to watch how amazing it is there. It was great. It was a dinner table talk tonight that I was really proud of. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, very awesome.
That was a nice plug, Carla.
I appreciate that. Well, I'll be honest with you, going back from working at the state level and teaching, helping fire departments create their prevention programs and doing the stuff, I miss teaching so much. So when the opportunity came, I jumped on it. I haven't looked back. It's been the most amazing experience being back teaching and being back in prevention. It's wonderful.
You're perfect for it.
Oh, well, thank you.
Hey, I do want to revisit one thing that you mentioned, though, Dennis, about how Dick Van Dyke and the older generation teaching stop, drop, and roll. I will tell you, in just my short amount of time in the fire service,
short 30 years, yeah.
But messages change, and we as a prevention and or an education industry, family partnership, however you want to call it, are now learning. We're learning, right? So we're not teaching old tricks. We're learning new stuff, and we're seeing that in the last 10 years or so, we have tried not to teach stop, drop, and roll to the younger crowd because they can't differentiate. A lot of experts in our industry would tell you that a small child can't determine stay low and go or stop, drop, and roll, and the initial thought is stop. Well, you don't want a child that's 4 in a house fire thinking stop. You want them thinking go. So a lot of that messaging, even I can even see where they begin to pull back on that because it's not for all ages.
Right. You know, and I can understand the messaging changing, but the priority is what I was talking about.
Yes, sir.
Because you can still have celebrities delivering whatever message is applicable now, but it's just changed because you have to get people's attention because you know, young people may not give a damn about a educator talking about something, but now if there was a Beyonce talking about the same message, then it could be received differently. And it just seems that overall, the emphasis on it changed, where prevention really seems to be the redheaded stepchild, if you would.
I agree.
And
We've
you know,
always been that way.
and when you talk about budget cuts, you know, an educator gets cut much more quickly than taking someone off of a truck, you know, because you want to have enough people if there's a fire, but you want to have a prevention person so that the fire doesn't occur. Going back to your point, Beverly, but so it's kind of like the monster eating itself, kind of. And we have a poster in the lobby of the Georgia Firefighters Burn Foundation. And it says, the worst fire or injury is the one that could have been avoided, you know, and that just so resonates with us because, man, you know, people, if it can be avoided, that's really what we want. And that's really what you guys are talking about. And that's really what we want people to hear. And this hour has rolled so fast.
I know.
We've got about 5 minutes left. And I want to take this time to give each of you an opportunity to share your wisdom or share a word of encouragement or advice. You know, we generally don't do advice, but I think this is a topic that definitely needs to share because there are some things that were shared here tonight that I'm more than sure people had no idea and didn't know. So I want to open it up to give you guys each an opportunity to share some wisdom. And we'll start with you, Carla.
Oh,
what wisdom do you want to leave the hundreds of thousands of people who are tuned into this?
You know, there's so much, but you know what George said, what the biggest thing for me is, you know, we were talking about stop, drop, and roll. Just make sure that if you're an educator, just double check and be consistent, but just put together a plan, have a plan, you know, stay focused. And our biggest thing is just watch what you're doing. Remove those hazards, prevent it from occurring. And it's not a lot of work. Think about the things that you do. I mean, you know, one of the things that we've seen, a big one is space heaters, you know, give the space heaters some space. You know, now we're coming into the colder months, you know, things are all raising in prices. You know, people can't afford to heat their homes. We're using alternative heating methods. We had a 6-member family die in 2015 or 2016 because they put a wood stove in a manufactured home up in North Georgia. Dad put it in wrong. I mean, you know, it's just, you know, ask for help, get those resources, call your local fire department, talk to them about it. Education is so important and learning about it is really important.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, reflecting on that fire that occurred, the chief up there reached out to the Burn Foundation and had me come up and speak to an assembly at the high school.
Yes.
Because everyone was hypersensitive to injuries and death with those 6 people passing away. And I was very honored to go up and do it, you know, because I'm someone who was burned and I'm talking to them because 6 people just died in their local community. I was honored to do it. But it was also, I felt kind of bad that it took that to even do it. Why wasn't this just why couldn't this be just the normal course of what we do?
Yes.
You know, had
Welcome to
follow
our
some-
world.
Yes.
Well-
Welcome to what we deal with.
Yeah, yeah. So it's interesting you said it, because I thought about it, and even though I was honored, I still felt kind of,
I know.
why couldn't this just happen anyway? Come talk to the
Mhm.
high schoolers, you know, not the second and fourth graders, not
Mhm.
just them, but the high schoolers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. But good point. What point you got? You want to leave to folks, George? What do you got? Your vast wisdom.
Short and sweet. Don't be the one that says, I wish I would have known. You should be preparing, learning. You're never too old to learn. Doesn't matter how long you've even been in the service or not been in the service. It's just be aware. I mean, that we see it all the time, and I echo what Carla said, and I echo what you said too, Dennis. It's a shame that something bad has to happen before we want to talk about fire prevention and or education. But one of the things that I would definitely say to up and coming educators or departments that are thinking about putting on a full-time person or something of that nature, it is important. I mean, it is important, because the time that you can spend educating from a truck level you're minimized. And even our guys that are going out to EMS calls and talking about shelf life of detectors while they're on an EMS call, that's incorporated into our DNA, but yet it's still limited. So having somebody isolated to an education program and to where they can hone that skill, I think is absolutely imperative to a successful department.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Gary, what do you got for us?
I would just very quickly like to remind everybody, we focus on fire a lot, but I would like to say that as an EMT, most of the burns I've seen were from non-fire incidents. Hot water on the stove, grease on the stove. I would encourage people to not just think about the fire, but think about catastrophic things like having the handles to their pots on the outside where a child can become covered with grease or boiling water. That those are also very devastating things that they can prevent that will cause very serious burns.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I have a good friend that's in the chat, and she's from Vancouver, British Columbia. She's listening in tonight, and she was actually burned in a fire. Her son was playing with matches, and she had her door closed, and her son had his door closed, and he was in there playing with matches, and it started a fire. But you know, she's used that to do a tremendous amount of safety and prevention education, and that's what she does, and she does an amazing job. So she turned that thing into something that can benefit other folks, and she just wanted to tell you guys thank you for what you do. Yeah, it's really cool seeing her name in the chat. We haven't talked for a while, but I have to reconnect with her. But Beverly, what do you have for our viewing audience out there?
You know, we've talked about an awful lot of things on this in this program, and there's so much that I would like to share. What Linda was saying about I was just reading where she posted where she likes to go and talk to the teenagers. I think that, you know, it's been said that in order for an adult to change their behavior, it takes a significant life event. And it many times it doesn't have to be my significant event. It can be yours, or that person that said, I never thought it would happen to me, and here I am. And so there's so much value in that. If you had gone to that community at any other time, the message would have not been the same. That window of opportunity would not have been there. And I think that we have to capture those. And it's not making a poster child, or it's not, you know, but you have to go when people's attention is focused on that particular topic. One of the ways that I got my passion for this was one year through a series of fires where multiple people died, mainly children. And I knew that each one of those events didn't have to happen. It could have been prevented. That, you know, whether the matches were in the drawer where the kid could get them, or, you know, all of these different scenarios that we hear about what started a fire, there's a there's a factor somewhere before the event occurs where you could intervene. And that gave me my passion. And so I guess what I would say to people is fires don't have to happen. And certainly fire deaths don't have to happen. You do use your plan, and you do have smoke alarms so that when we get there, you're standing on the curb. That's what we want. That's what we would rather have. So we don't have to make that hard choice of risking a lot to save a lot. That, you know, I don't know that we'll ever reach the point where fire gets as much attention as crime. But I do think there's many things that can be done at the local level that heightens that awareness of that community to the risks that affect them, because every community is different. And the risks here in Emmanuel County are not going to be the same that they are in the city of Decatur. But we just have a whole different set of risks. And so people need to be at that local level, they really need to hone in on identifying those risks, and also informing the community that these are the risks and these are the hazards and this is what you can do to protect yourself. And there's all different kinds of ways to do that. We'll save that for another version of this. You know? But I really think that, and my perspective is that we have come a long way since when I first started at this, and prevention was the hated detail and was only for the sick and old, you know, or disabled, you know.
Or the real close to retirement.
Yeah, exactly. And now we're seeing people, I mean, it's really great to see people like Gary, I'll call him out, young, energetic captain. He's out there walking the walk and talking the talk, and that excites me.
Yeah, me
because
too.
I see more and more of that. And so I really think that as time goes on, this change, as slow as it is coming, and people like Gary are making it happen. And they, you know, Gary's he's an influencer, going to be an influencer to his peers. And I really think that I'm excited about what I have seen in the last 10 years. And I know the next 10, hopefully I'll be around to see them, are going to be just as exciting. So.
Yeah, and there are a lot of valuable resources around, and we're going to post those up on our website. So if people want to access resources or reach out to you guys, they can contact the foundation and get that. And I think this was a really good conversation tonight, and I hope that someone gleaned something out of this conversation. And it is just it makes us so excited to be able to partner with you guys, you know, for what you do. And you know, we hold people's hands once they're discharged, but man, if we could put ourselves out of business, that would be great, where there were no more burn survivors in the hospital and getting discharged. And the reality is that's not the case. And we're just glad to do that, but we couldn't do it without partnering with you guys. But in closing, I could not give a personal thank you, not as the executive director of the foundation, but as a burn survivor. When I was involved in a fire, me and a 13-year-old friend, he ran out of the house and was trying to run home while his clothes were on fire. And my older brother caught him and stopped him. But for me, I stopped, dropped, and rolled. And when those firefighters, when you guys came into the school every year, I didn't think I was paying attention. You know, that was a free class that I can sit in the back and mess with those girls. I didn't think I was paying attention. But when that fire occurred, here was my 13-year-old buddy trying to run out of the house. And here I was, 14 years old. First thing I thought about was stop, drop, and roll. I shouldn't run out because that's going to feed the fire. So it really did make a difference. And I have to say, thank you, George, Beverly, Carla, Gary. I have to thank you guys for what you do, because my survival and me being here today has everything to do with the work that you do. You know, and it's a thankless job. Somebody said it. But it really does make a difference. And I can confidently say that because it made a difference in my life. So just on behalf of all those folks like me, who've been impacted by what you do. Just thank you from the bottom of my heart, and also from the Georgia Firefighters Burn Foundation. Thank you for your time this evening. And with that, we'll say ta-ta.
Thank you, Dennis.
All right,
Thank you,
guys.
Dennis.
Yep.
Thank
Bye.
you.